I've been using the Apple Watch Ultra 3 and the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro out on the trail, and it still blows my mind that both of these can send and receive messages over satellite with no phone involved. But which one is better? Well, I think it depends a lot on what you're looking for. On the Apple Watch Ultra 3, you can only use the satellite connection when there's no cellular or Wi-Fi signal for the watch. And if you have a paired iPhone with you, it also needs to be completely disconnected or out of cell range and Wi-Fi range. And a little bit of a wrinkle, if your iPhone connects to the T-Mobile Starlink system, that's another form of satellite connection, it counts as a connection, and your Apple Watch Ultra 3 won't be able to switch to satellite mode. But assuming everything is disconnected, then your watch will show a little satellite icon telling you that satellite is an option here. And from there, you can click on that icon and then go into the connection process, which I will show you in a second. With the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro, it's a lot simpler. You can have your phone with you, put it in airplane mode, which a lot of us do when we're out hiking, and the watch will try to use its internal LTE connection to send a message, and then it will fall back to satellite. And if you don't even want to use LTE, you can go into the settings and in a typical Garmin fashion, tweak it so that it will only use satellite if your phone isn't connected. Now, I appreciate the fact that Apple tries to make the connection automatic and simple, but I do think Garmin is a little bit better here because it will work in airplane mode and allows the user to decide when they want to leverage using satellite or not. Now, when it's time to actually connect, each watch does it a little bit differently. The Fenix 8 Pro connects through geostationary satellites. They're about 22,000 miles above the surface of the Earth, and they sit over the equator and stay fixed over one spot as the planet turns, a geostationary orbit. To connect to the satellite, you actually have to point the watch towards the satellite, and it takes a few steps. First, you have to rotate so that you're facing the satellite. There's this compass rose and a little icon here for the satellite. So once those are lined up, then you move on to the next step, which sometimes involves the need to calibrate the compass, in which case you have to twist your wrist around and arm around in a figure-8 fashion for a little bit. Once that's done, you tilt your wrist so that the watch face lines up with the satellite. When the circles on the screen overlap, then you're pointing at the satellite, you hold it steady there until that circle turns blue, and then it indicates that it's searching for a satellite. Once it hooks onto a satellite, the circles turn green, and they go to connecting. You're establishing a connection here, and then once it's connected, it'll say sending, and then assuming that you're sending a message or something, it says sent. Now, the thing here is that if you can't get a connection, let's say you're blocked on the side of a cliff, the satellite is geostationary and the satellite's not going to move for you. So you might have to move in order to connect to the satellite, and that might not always be an option depending on where you are. But having that high altitude geostationary satellite gives it a huge footprint on Earth. So you do get a lot of coverage just from one satellite, but the downside is that because they are over the equator, the farther away you get from the equator, the lower the satellite sits on the horizon and the trickier it can get to get a connection. The Apple Watch Ultra 3 works a little bit differently because it uses Globalstar's low Earth orbit or LEO satellites. There are several dozen of these constantly circling the Earth, about 879 miles above the surface, much lower than the geostationary satellites that Garmin uses. Now, the key thing to know with these satellites is that if there isn't a satellite overhead now, one will likely be passing over or within range within a few minutes. So if you're stuck somewhere like on the side of a cliff and you need to send an SOS, you don't necessarily have to move. If the connection fails, you can just stay there and hopefully satellites will pass overhead shortly. Now, when you use a satellite, you have to wait for the watch to give you this little icon telling you that that is available. And you can just tap on that little icon on the top there to get to the satellite connection screen. That tap target is kind of small, so I prefer to go into the control center. If you go to control center, you hit edit and then hit add, and then add the satellite control here. It's a little bit easier to get to. You can just press the side button. It gives you a larger tap target to bring the satellite screen up when you're sweaty and tired. Now, when you get to the satellite screen, you have some options. You can send a message, share your location, and even do an emergency SOS. You go to whichever one you go to, let's say send a message, you compose your message, hit send, and then you might have to wait for a minute or two for a satellite to come into range. You might also have to turn to face it, but the interface is pretty good about letting you know when a satellite is coming or how long you might have to wait. The nice thing is you don't have to twist your wrist around. You can hold the watch naturally as you normally would when you're looking at it. You'll see the satellite comes overhead, then after a few seconds, the circle should turn green, and if you've sent something or sharing your location, there's a little progress bar, and then the message goes out. Now for me, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 was a clear winner when it came to connecting, just being able to hold my watch in a natural position, having information about when I can expect satellites or where I need to point my wrist, just was really easy. And if you've used satellites, iPhone connectivity, it's really the same thing as that, just in a miniature version. And I do appreciate the fact that satellites will come overhead eventually. And on the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro, again, because it's geostationary, if you're stuck on the side of a cliff or something, you might just be out of luck. And overall, I found the twisting of the wrist just to be a little bit more cumbersome when it came time to connect to a satellite. In a lot of ways, the features on these two watches are very similar. With both of them, you can send and receive messages, even do a little tap-back reaction over satellite. The Apple Watch Ultra 3 is nice because you can do offline text-to-speech. You just talk to the watch and it will convert your speech into text, put it in there. So that makes it super easy to get a text out. You can also do things like pop a little keyboard up if you like. On the Fenix 8 Pro, there's no voice to text, so you have to type everything out on the little keyboard. It does have predictive text, and you can load quick text messages beforehand through the Messenger app. On the Fenix 8 Pro, you can message anyone. Ideally, they have a free Garmin Messenger app so they can get the best experience, but you can also just send a message to an SMS number and they will get it as a text message. But your Fenix doesn't have its own phone number. The phone number it comes from is just a random one that will change over time. The Apple experience is way more integrated into your normal messaging flow. You simply send a message to anyone that you normally do in your iMessage app on your phone or your watch. People can text you at your regular phone number and it'll appear on the watch just like you do. No secondary apps or other kinds of workarounds to do. Except Apple does have some caveats here when it comes to messaging. First, if you're texting another Blue Bubble iMessage recipient, you have to have texted them within 30 days for this to work. But if you want to text somebody that's not on iMessage, so a Green Bubble non-iMessage recipients like an Android phone, it gets weird. To make this work, your iPhone needs to be powered on and connected to a cellular or Wi-Fi data source, but it doesn't need to be with you. So if you're hiking with just your watch and your phone sitting at home or in the car with a connection and powered on, you can text non-iMessage contacts. But if your phone is with you and offline, just like your watch is, then you're out of luck. This is a little bit weird, but obviously there's some kind of a hoop they had to jump through here in terms of getting this to work technically. You can share your location on both devices. On the Apple Watch, it's done through the Find My app, and on the Fenix 8 Pro, it's just sending a normal message out with your location. In both instances, it's always manual. It's always a manual process. There's no automatic tracking over satellite on either of these watches, unfortunately. Both have satellite SOS. In Apple's case, it's going to go to a standard emergency service like 911. In Garmin, it goes to their Garmin response team, which is actually set up for outdoor emergencies and has a great track record. I think they have over 20,000 rescues so far, backcountry rescues. And if you're wondering if you have to twist your wrist or connect for every message like you're going back and forth on an SOS, both watches will actually stay connected if possible. You'll see a green icon on both of them indicating the watch is connected, and you can just text back and forth without having to reconnect unless it loses the connection. The Fenix 8 Pro offers weather forecasts through satellite, but you have to trigger it on your phone in the Messenger app. So for features, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I don't see a clear winner here. I think a lot of it just depends on who you're texting and, how does texting fit into the workflow, or how does it dovetail cleanly into what they use, right? If you have somebody who's okay using the Garmin Messenger app, then the Fenix 8 Pro I think will be fine. But if you just want to send regular text messages like you do on your phone, something like the Apple Watch Ultra will definitely be the winner. Now, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I haven't gotten the Apple Watch Ultra 3 to fail when it comes to connecting to a satellite yet. I'm sure it's failed for a lot of other folks. I'm sure it's going to fail for me in the future, but so far over the last few weeks trying this out in the backcountry, it has been solid every time. Sometimes I'll have to wait a few minutes for a satellite to come by, to come into view, but when it happens, I've been able to connect, send messages back and forth just by holding my wrist naturally, and it's been great. I wish I could say the same for the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro, but it's been a little bit more hit or miss there. Once I've connected to the satellite, the latency is very low. The messages go out super quick, and I get messages back quickly as well. But I've definitely had trouble connecting over the numerous times that I've used it. Sometimes I will go from the blue circle to the red poor connection circle. Sometimes I'll go from the green circle to the red circle. Generally, it struggles a little bit under tree cover, and it's even failed under blue skies, but blue skies are definitely the place where it works best. And also, just from a general perspective, the watches seem to take a little bit longer to send and receive than the larger devices like the iPhone or a handheld Garmin inReach. And on the Garmin inReach end, the Fenix 8 Pro doesn't use the same satellite system as the traditional inReach units. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, check out my review on the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro where I do a deeper dive there, but the satellites are a little bit different. So when it comes to reliability, at least in my experience, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 has been the clear winner. Let me know how it's working for you in different parts of the country or the world. Either watch the Fenix 8 Pro or the Apple Watch Ultra 3. I'd love to know what other people are experiencing out there as well. When it comes to the battery, there wasn't a definitive number in terms of how much satellites drain it down. Whatever it might be, I noticed that if I sent maybe like 4, 5, 6 messages, if I had like a heavier exchange back and forth, it would drain the battery maybe 1 or 2%. But otherwise, these are the figures I was getting, and just sending a message, every hour or two didn't really dent the battery much from there. That said, it does have an effect on the battery if you're sending messages, and if you were in an SOS situation, you're probably going to be sending more messages back and forth. So probably good practice is to just charge it up to 100 before you leave and use it if that's an option for you. Now, if you want to use any of the connected features on the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro, including SOS, you have to pay for a Garmin inReach subscription. And there's different subscription levels depending on how much satellite time you use. If you want to figure out what's best for you, I have a cost calculator on my website. Just search for Hiking Guy Garmin inReach cost calculator. I think that works. And you can figure out which plan makes the most sense. Garmin also has coverage in certain countries. I'll put a link to the coverage map under the video. The important thing to know is, unlike other Garmin inReach devices, it doesn't work on 100% of the globe. Now, for the Apple Watch Ultra 3, it's a little bit different. You get free text messages and location sharing over satellite, unlimited for 2 years. But the catch is you need to have an active carrier plan or cellular plan on the watch. So usually that's something you get as an add-on to your phone, right? It's like between 10 and 20 bucks here in the States usually. And then you can use your watch without your phone and have cellular on it. The neat thing about Apple is that you can use SOS regardless of whether you have a cellular plan or not. So if you need to ask for help and you haven't gotten a cellular plan on your watch, you can do that. Now, like Garmin, Apple coverage is also limited. I'll put a link to the Apple coverage under the video as well. The important thing to know in terms of coverage for both Garmin and Apple is that it's generally not a technical limitation, but more of a regulatory limitation. So if you don't like that it's not available in your country, complain to your politician. It's not usually the fact that satellites aren't going over your area. I know Apple has been adding more and more countries to the supported satellite list for the iPhone, and I'm guessing the same thing is probably going to happen for the Apple Watch Ultra 3. I'm a Garmin and an Apple user, and there are a lot of different factors that come into play when it comes to choosing the right watch for you. But if you take everything off the table and just focus on the pure satellite connectivity and experience, for me, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 was a winner here. It was just more reliable, it was easier to use, more intuitive. And as an Apple user, it was integrated into my normal iPhone messaging workflow. So that all worked really well. Now, is this going to be the only satellite communicator I bring out on the trail? Absolutely not. I think if you're maybe like a trail runner and you go out of satellite range, just having one of these watches could make a lot of sense. But for me, I'm going to use the Apple Watch Ultra 3 with my iPhone, which has satellite, which is also free, and also with my Garmin inReach Mini 2, which I have a paid subscription for. I have 3 forms of satellite communication, actually 4 when you count the fact that my phone has Starlink and the messaging. So that's a pretty good level of redundancy there. And, I'm confident that I could maybe communicate if I have an SOS or I need to help somebody else out in the field. But, It all depends. If you're an Android user, maybe that equation changes. I think you have to decide for yourself. But for me, I like having the satellite on my watch. If I fall down a side of a hill or something and I lose my phone, I lose my backpack, I lose my inReach, I still have satellite connectivity on my wrist, which I think is pretty handy there. All right, guys, that's what I have. If you have experiences using either one of these watches, please leave a comment. I'm sure it'll be helpful for everyone. And a big thank you to everyone on Patreon, everyone who supports me and makes guides like this possible. I could not do it without your help, and I appreciate it more than you know. So thank you so much. Stay safe, and I will see you out on the trails.